I want to think a little bit bigger picture of this. More recently in the news, there's a lot of things going on the southern border, immigration, refugees, gang members, cartels, all of them, everything from MS-13 to Colombian cartels. They're all being talked about. They're kind of in the American zeitgeist right now because of the different actions that are being taken by the current administration. In addition to that, I mean, cartels were recently relabeled as terrorist organizations, which opens up a slew of military options that can potentially be taken against them. All of that being said, one of the things that I think has helped their survival is their ability to infiltrate at the very highest levels of government, of banks, of businesses. How compromised are politicians, bankers, and et cetera in this country right now by the cartel, do you think?
The cartels, beginning in the late 70s in Colombia, were really able to amass power by having friends in high places.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of the rule book, right? And unfortunately, that rule book has sustained for decades. During Martin's operation, he helped trace, and this was a public scandal, but that, cartel drug money finds its way into presidential elections in Colombia all the time. And a lot of these candidates, maybe they don't overtly take the suitcase in the hotel room, but they might know it's there and they don't say anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And in Martin's case, it was pretty curious that the president of Colombia at the time, Ernesto Samper, allegedly received drug money into his campaign, and there were like audio tapes and like it was a whole thing, and like all this stuff came out and he denied it, and then it was kind of like, well, maybe it was in there but I didn't know, and blah blah blah. But because it was coming from the Cali cartel, at the same time the Cali cartel wanted to surrender to the Colombian government for favorable terms. How do you get your favorable terms, right? That's just an example. But you look at Mexico now, you look at a lot of different countries in Central America. I mean, the irony is that the way that these countries are able to generate income for their citizens is through illegal means. And it's like, because of that, a lot of people in power and politics can be susceptible to corruption because they potentially feel like there's no other way to really do this job, right? Mm-hmm. And, like I said earlier, is that like Martin kind of felt that there was an aspect of futility in his job because to him, the war on drugs never really started. Like, to really dismantle the manufacturing, the transportation, the selling, and the consuming of narcotics, it is bigger and more complicated than just Border Patrol, And the way that Martin has explained it to me from his point of view is that you have to really go out in there and think of this as like a multifaceted war. You're not going to drop bombs, in Sinaloa or something like that. But you have to really think about this in a smart way and understand how you can use guerrilla and perhaps psychological warfare to create instability, which then can make the cartels topple, right? In the same way that we try to do it with communism and all this other stuff. It's just like Martin said, okay, if Donald Trump wants to fly drones over Mexico and drop bombs, he's like, yeah, okay. But again, if you have a hammer, everything's a nail. Mm-hmm. Once the cartels know your playbook, they're going to see you coming from a mile away. They're going to pivot, and then you're back to square one. He says that in order to be able to really curtail the cartel's influence is to do a multifaceted approach. You have some overt tactics, some covert tactics, some political tactics, but it requires a sustained effort. Mm-hmm. And for Martin, he was like, for me, working law enforcement, I'm in the thick of it in Puerto Rico with these cartel guys, and I turn on the news, and back home, it's the 3 strikes, you go to jail forever type of stuff. It's like our priorities maybe were a little mixed up in terms of how to really solve this problem. And it's complicated, and not everyone has the right answer. I certainly don't.
It gets real messy, and obviously The drug trade has impacted every corner of America. I don't think I've ever met anybody here that hasn't been personally affected by a family member or friend that has gone down that path and been negatively affected. I mean, and yeah, on the legislation side, I think it's led to, the legislation around what's illegal, what's not illegal has led to the mass incarceration of Americans of a lot of different stripes. I saw one interview just floating around social media the other day with a guy that has 58 felonies. He's in prison for a long time. He's like, most of them were simple possession, like simple possession, not even intent to distribute or anything like that. And it's like, so we've got a little bit of a problem to address on multiple fronts. This is not a simple thing. And I think this book is going to leave people with a lot of questions too, just because this book is coming out at the right time. It really is.
I think so too, and I asked Martin about Trump, Trump wants to wage war on the cartels. That's what he said. And Martin said, he's correct, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the thing about the war on drugs and about what Martin tried to do, is that you're doing the right thing. You're winning, sort of.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the big picture takeaway that has presence today, in that the war on drugs is a quagmire. It is squishy. It is multi-pronged. But there are ways to make a measurable impact.
Mm-hmm.
They're difficult. They come along maybe once in a generation, because sometimes what you really need to make a dent is one guy who's willing to go undercover and become one of them. Martin was the first.
Yeah.
He's been the only one to do it. But I am confident maybe there's another young guy out there who might read this book and say, maybe I could do that too.